Over the past 4 years, I have played one game more than any other. And that game is... Well, you obviously know what the game is, or you wouldn't have clicked on the video. So, get pranked, you absolute nerd. The Last of Us Part 2 may be the most polarizing game ever made. And it single-handedly split the fandom into two separate groups. On the one hand, we have... let's just call them the wolves. And on the other hand, we have, well, let's just call them the Seraphites. Now, the wolves are people who like the game, you know, maybe they love the game, despite some of its flaws, which, in my humble opinion, are very few and far between. Now, the Seraphites, they are people who fucking despise this game and hate Naughty Dog for, quote, doing Joel dirty. Guess which group I have to try and appeal to, Now, I am obviously exaggerating. Not every person on the Seraphite side hates this game. They may just have problems with it, and I just don't understand their problems. Oh dear God, this video is pointless. Okay, here's the plan. I know that people who already love the game aren't going to gain anything from this video, except possibly vindication from my opinions. I don't know, to each their own. So I need to direct my opinions towards the Seraphites, you know, the group of people who aren't the biggest fans. I'm doing this because they're the only people who would really watch this video to try and understand why a wolf would enjoy this game. Now, before writing the script, I have played through Part 2 once again for the 9th time, not including the attempted speedruns and other miscellaneous tomfoolery. And during my playthrough, I wrote down all my feelings and opinions, and I believe I've narrowed down all my thoughts into 3 huge pillars, upon which my love for The Last of Us Part 2 stands. But obviously, there are some points not included in these pillars, which I will discuss later. Now, I don't want this intro to get too long, and I'm kind of wasting your time, so let's get into the meat and bones of this video, shall we? Oh, and just a warning, my first pillar is gonna make some people real mad. Pillar 1. Joel's death was completely justified and deserved, even if it upset people. Alright, let's just rip the band-aid off, shall we? Joel had it coming, and honestly, it was a long time coming. Look, I know that statement probably made some of you slam your keyboard or chuck your phone across the room, but hear me out. Joel's death wasn't just a cheap shock value moment or a betrayal of the character we came to love. It was, in every sense of the word, inevitable. Let's rewind a bit. You know, back to the ending of the first game. Do you remember that moment when Joel decided that Ellie's life was more important than the future of humanity? That wasn't just a tough decision, it was a selfish one. Now, don't get me wrong, I totally get why he did it. Joel lost his daughter, and in Ellie he found someone who filled that void. But that decision, it didn't just save Ellie, it painted a big old red target on Joel's back. The thing about choices, especially in a world as cruel and unforgiving as the one in The Last of Us, is that they have consequences. Joel didn't just cross the line, he bulldozed right through it. He slaughtered an entire group of people, including the one doctor who could possibly have created a cure. And you know what? That kind of action doesn't just fade away. It echoes, it lingers, and eventually it catches up to you. In Joel's case, it caught up to him in the form of Abby, a character who, whether you like her or not, had every reason to want Joel dead. So, when Joel met his end, it wasn't just some random act of cruelty by Naughty Dog. It was the culmination of all the choices he made. His death wasn't just justified, it was a narrative necessity. It's the price he paid for the lives he took, and the world he shaped with his actions. Abby's revenge wasn't just personal, it was the universe's way of balancing the scales. I know it sucks, it's brutal, but that's the world Joel lived in. A world where every action has a reaction and every sin demands a reckoning. Joel's death wasn't just deserved, it was the only way his story could have ended. It was the brutal, gut-wrenching truth that The Last of Us has always been about.
Please don't shoot! Joel, please get up!
Pillar 2. The split narrative decision was great for the story that they were telling. Okay, so I can already hear the groans from here. Why did they make me play as Abby? Or the pacing was all over the place. Yeah, I've heard it all before. But let me tell you why the split narrative decision was not just good, but essential for the story that The Last of Us Part 2 was trying to tell. First off, let's get one thing straight. This game wasn't designed to make you feel comfortable. The Last of Us universe is brutal, raw, unforgiving, as I've already said. And that's exactly what this narrative split taps into. By making you walk in Abby's shoes, the game forces you to confront a harsh reality. In this world, there are no heroes and villains, just people trying to survive. And sometimes, the bad guy in your story is the good guy in someone else's. Now, I get it. The moment you're thrown into Abby's perspective, especially after that gut-wrenching moment with Joel, you're pissed. You're thinking, why should I care about her? But that's exactly the point. This isn't a story about good versus evil, it's about the cycle of violence, the grey areas of morality, and how every action, no matter how justified, has its consequences. The split narrative decision is brilliant because it challenges your preconceived notions. You start the game seeing Abby as a monster, the enemy, but as you delve into her story, you realize she's just as human as Ellie. She's been through her own hell, suffered her own losses, and made her own tough choices. And by the time you finish her arc, you're left questioning everything you thought you knew. Let's not forget, though, the impact this had on Ellie's journey. By the time you loop back to Ellie, you've seen the devastation she's caused from Abby's perspective. You realize that Ellie's quest for revenge isn't heroic, it's destructive. The split narrative forces you to see the story from all these angles, making you understand that in this world, nobody walks away clean. So yeah, the split narrative system was controversial, but it was necessary. It was risky, sure, but that's what made it work. It wasn't just about telling a story, it was about making you feel the weight of every decision, the pain of every loss, and the futility of the cycle of violence. Naughty Dog didn't want you to just play a game, they wanted you to live in this world, to understand it from all sides. And that's exactly what they achieved with this narrative structure. Pillar 3. It didn't have a happy ending. Alright, here's the final gut punch. The ending. Or should I say, the lack of a happy one. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, after all that suffering, couldn't they at least give us some closure? Maybe a glimmer of hope? But here's the thing. The Last of Us Part 2 was never about giving you what you wanted. It was about telling you a story that stayed true to the world it created, a world where happy endings are rare, if they exist at all. Let's be real for a second. How many stories have we seen where the protagonist gets their revenge, walks off into the sunset, and everything's wrapped up with a neat little bow? Too many. But that's not how life works, especially not in the world of The Last of Us. This is a world that's been shattered by a pandemic, where every day is a fight for survival, and where the lines between right and wrong are so blurred, they're practically non-existent. A happy ending would have felt cheap, unearned, and honestly, out of place. The ending is actually quite reminiscent of Revenge of the Sith. Huge Star Wars fan, by the way. In how both stories reject the notion of a triumphant conclusion. Just as Revenge of the Sith plunges us into the tragedy of Anakin's fall, leaving us with the bitter taste of the dark side's victory and the crumbling of the Republic, The Last of Us Part 2 strips away the hope of a cathartic resolution. Both narratives emphasize the devastating consequences of choices driven by fear, anger, and a thirst for power or revenge, leaving their protagonists broken and isolated. In the end, neither Ellie nor Anakin finds the redemption or peace they sought, illustrating the inescapable cost of their actions and the futility of the paths they chose. Ellie's journey from start to finish was driven by one thing: revenge. But as we've seen time and time again, revenge doesn't bring peace. It doesn't heal wounds, it only deepens them. By the time Ellie reaches that final confrontation with Abby, she's lost everything. Her friends, her family, even her sense of self. She's a shell of the person we once knew, consumed by her need for vengeance. So when she finally lets Abby go, it's not a victory. It's a realization that no amount of bloodshed will bring her the closure she's been chasing. The fact that Ellie ends up alone, with nothing but her regrets, is the harsh reality of her choices. It's the price she paid for her obsession with revenge, and it's a reminder that in this world, actions have consequences. There's no neat resolution, no happily ever after, because that's not the story this game was telling. Oh, and let's not forget, the lack of a happy ending also underscores the game's central theme, the cycle of violence. If Ellie had gotten her revenge and found peace, it would have undermined everything the game was trying to say. The point is that violence only begets more violence, and the cycle has to end somewhere, even if it leaves you broken and alone. So yeah, the ending wasn't what many of us wanted, but it is exactly what the story needed. It was brutal, it was devastating, and it was real. And that's why it's so powerful. The Last of Us Part 2 didn't give us a happy ending because in the world they created, happy endings don't come without a cost. If they come at all, it was a bold choice, and it paid off in delivering a story that sticks with you long after the credits roll. First, non-pillar point. See? I told you I'd discuss these later. I prefer Abby's combat style. I mean, where do I even start? If Ellie is the quick and stealthy assassin, Abby is the human wrecking ball. She doesn't mess around with sneaking in the shadows or tiptoeing past clickers. Nah, she's all about getting up close and personal. And when she does, you feel every single hit. Abby is built like a tank, and the game totally leans into that. When you're playing as her, it's like, okay, I'm not here to play nice. I'm here to crush skulls and take names. She's got this brutal, no-nonsense approach to the combat. And those melee takedowns, oh, yeah, they're not just takedowns. They are bone-crunching, skull-smashing displays of raw power. The kind of thing that makes you wince and think, oh, that's gotta hurt. Her arsenal also screams, I'm not here to play. Pipe bombs, shotguns, and let's not forget that hammer. Abby's weapons are as heavy-hitting as she is, making every encounter feel like a fight for survival. It's not about finesse, it's about overwhelming force. When you're in Abby's shoes, you're not just surviving, you're dominating. And honestly, this combat style perfectly mirrors who Abby is. She's not about sneaking around, she's about facing danger head-on and using her strength to overpower anything in her way. It's a brutal, relentless way to play, and it fits her character to a T. So yeah, Abby's combat style? It's like a golf club to the face. Sorry, Joel. Unforgiving, intense, and kind of awesome. And that's why I prefer her combat style to Ellie's. Second non-pillar point. Alright, let's talk about something that often gets overlooked. Well, maybe not totally overlooked, but still, people don't really focus on it as much as they should. I'm talking about the world building and those juicy little lore items scattered throughout The Last of Us Part 2. You know, the stuff you find in notes, letters, and random scraps of paper that paint a picture of the lives lived and lost in this apocalyptic hellscape. One of my absolute favorites, Boris the Bowman. Oh man, this guy's story is a roller coaster. Okay. His name was Boris Legoslov, aka Boris the Bowman. He wasn't just some random name on a note. He was a local legend, a celebrated archer, and a loving father whose life was turned upside down when the outbreak hit. Things took an even darker turn when the WLF rolled into town and accused his daughter of treason, executing her without mercy. Boris, consumed by grief and rage, decided to take matters into his own hands. He became a one-man resistance, picking off the WLF soldiers with his bow, turning into a ghost that haunted the streets of Seattle. As you piece together his story through the scattered notes, you see the Boris's descent into vengeance and madness. What started as a fight for justice becomes a relentless, all-consuming quest for revenge. His final note, found in his fortified home, reveals a man who's lost everything. His family, his sanity, and even his humanity. All in the name of vengeance. Sound familiar? Boris's story is a tragic, cautionary tale that echoes the broader themes of the game, showing how the cycle of violence can consume even the best of us. So you see, these lore items aren't just filler, they're the glue that holds the world together. They give you context, they give you backstory, and they give you all the feels when you realize the length people went just to survive, or sometimes, to die on their own terms. It's the kind of world building that makes you slow down, take your time, and really soak in the atmosphere. It's like, yeah, you're on this revenge mission, but you're also walking through the remnants of a world that used to be, piecing together the lives of people who aren't there anymore. And you want to know the best part? These little bits of lore add layers to the main story without shoving it in your face. They're there if you want them, but they never distract from what you're doing. Instead, they enrich the experience, making every encounter, every deserted house, and every quiet moment in the game feel like you're a part of something much bigger. So yeah, props to the world building team, because these little lore items are like hidden gems that turn an already great game into an unforgettable journey. I really recommend searching for as many as you can in your next playthrough. Oh hi, editing Mighty Venom here. So I never actually realized this, but I did not add this one specific thing into the script, so I'm going to talk about it now. If you look at all the little bits of notes that I'll be flashing on the screen as I'm talking about, all the little bits of lore you can find, if you read all the things about Boris carefully, it shows his descent into madness, and it explains why all the infected are in the garage. It's because Boris put them there. If you pause the video and go back and read the notes, you'll see Boris was the reason all those infected were inside that garage, which I think is kind of insane. Anyway, you can get back to watching the video now. I'm going to get back to editing. Love y'all. Third non-pillar point. Okay, let's get real for a second. And I know I've said that before, but let's actually get real this time. It is a very heavy game. It is filled with heartbreak, tragedy, and moments that will make you question the meaning of life itself. But despite all that, it's really fun to play. Yeah, I said it. The game's fun. Even when it's ripping your heart out and stomping on it. There's something incredibly satisfying about the gameplay mechanics, the fluid combat, the tension of sneaking past enemies. Oh, it's just so good. The thrill of nailing a headshot with a bow or taking out a whole group of enemies with a well-timed trap. The game nails that sweet spot between challenging and rewarding. Every encounter feels meaningful and every victory feels earned. And let's not forget about the variety. Whether you're Ellie with her quick and stealthy approach or Abby with her powerhouse take no prisoner style, the game keeps you on your toes, making each playthrough feel fresh and exciting. Plus, the environments are just a joy to explore. Even if they're filled with danger, the level of detail, the atmosphere, and the sheer beauty of the ruined world pull you in, making you want to search every nook and cranny, even if you're scared of what you might find. It's this combination of intense gameplay, immersive environments, and tight mechanics that keeps you coming back for more, no matter how emotionally wrecked you might be. So yeah, The Last of Us Part 2 might be a sad, depressing-ass game, but it's also incredibly fun. And as I've said previously, it's the kind of game that sticks with you long after you've put down the controller. Not just because of its story, but because of how much you enjoyed every moment of playing it. And that's pretty much it for me, guys. I just want to thank everybody for watching and suffering through my somewhat nonsensical rambling. I've wanted to make this video for a while, so I'm happy that I'm finally finished it with it. I know I wasn't as funny as I would have liked to be, but it was a somewhat serious video, and I kind of wanted to explain why it's my favorite game. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I don't know, leave a like and stuff. Show support in any way that would somewhat boost this video in the algorithm, because there's more to come. Anyway, I don't know how to end this video, so bye.